Hi, it's Rennie. I feel like I should just straight up channel or share some messages because I'm in a state where I'm really like struggling to balance the duality of what's going on right now, of like with my life and what's happening externally versus what's happening internally because they're contradicting very heavily, and my moods and the way that I'm coping with it, with all of the energies at play, is very up and down. And I know that there are a lot of other people who are experiencing this, so I feel called to share the things that are coming through. Mind you, just because I channel does not mean I know how to apply these things. I'm still in the process of learning. I'm literally on this journey with you, and that is my purpose, and that is part of my path, is to be doing this very difficult work with you. So like, I'm not a guru, I'm not someone who has to figure it out, but I do receive the messages, and it feels to me like I'm being called to share them because other people are feeling this energy that I'm experiencing too. So you might have some challenges in your life right now, and there might be some things that you are seeking external answers to. And right now, what Spirit really wants you to learn in this season through these challenges and difficulties is that your intuition is what is required. You trusting your intuition is what is required for you to get to that next phase, that next chapter, to get through this very difficult transition that a lot of you are in. It feels like a lot of people are in this like void space waiting for the next chapter, waiting for the blessing, for the miracle, for the change, for the positive shifts to happen, but instead they're getting different types of challenges or setbacks or delays or just simply stagnation where there feels like there's nothing really changing or happening. And so what's really coming through right now, and it reminds me of something that came up earlier in this year, kind of the end of last year, is that this is intuition training. And when I said that at the beginning of this year, I already had a feeling it would be difficult, but like being in the thick of it now, I feel like it's important to remind myself and also to remind you that intuition training is not easy because we live in a society and a world that we've been conditioned to only use our logic mind. And the problem with that is that a lot of this world and the way that we've been socialized has been conditioned around fear. So as we all kind of collectively evolve, because despite what it looks like and despite our external circumstances and despite what's happening around us, we are actually evolving. Part of evolution is going into the shadows first, going into the darkness first, going into the depths first. And what's required when you go into the darkness is that you see everything. Like, you see it clearly. There's like no hiding. That's what revelations are. It's things being revealed. That's the season that we are in collectively. Is when we can see all of the issues, not only like within ourselves and our own shadows, but collectively in the world. Like, we see all the problems for what they are, and how we cope with that varies person to person. Sometimes shadow work, you'll be like in denial. You have those people who will be in denial. They'll see the issue and they deny it. Then you have people that like they see it, they want to address it, but they don't know how. So there's stagnation there, there's complacency. And then you have people that face it head on, but sometimes because they're facing it head on in an external only way, things can be a little bit chaotic, right? There's like all these different ways that we approach it that can make the process challenging. And this is not judgment because I'm a shadow worker and I know how chaotic it can be. But this is just to say that like this chapter, this lesson, this, like, I want to say course that we're currently in is intuition training, because part of going into the depths and learning these things about ourselves is coming out of that space and learning to integrate everything that we've learned. It's just like, think of it as like you just graduated from college. Now you actually have to learn how to apply the things you learned in school. It's one thing to sit in class and learn it, right? It's another thing to actually go out and apply it and use it. Once you get to the job and you start using it, you realize how much you still don't know about actually doing the thing, right? That's the phase that we're in. So a lot of us are kind of in this in-between space where a lot of what we're seeing in our reality is reflective of that old version of ourselves that we are evolving out of. And as we step into this new chapter, we have to learn how to be led by our intuition, which feels counterintuitive to most of us because, again, we are not conditioned to do that. And again, if we only go with our logic mind, a lot of our actions going to actually be rooted in fear because that's how we're conditioned, because that's the type of world we live in. We can clearly see now that the systems that most of us were raised in, a lot of times were not healthy systems. They were never systems designed for us to be well, for us to be thriving, right? So us reconnecting with our intuition actually feels scary and we can't trust it, right? But the thing is that many of us have been doing this subconsciously for some time, especially those that are very sensitive, right? But again, learning how to apply your actions so that it's reflected in your life, so that you see like what it looks like in your life when you are intuitively led consistently, that's scary because it requires you to allow the things from the old life, the old version that was rooted in just logic and fear alone. Not to say logic is bad, but logic alone in our world can be, right? Because again, it's mostly fear based. It's mostly worried about or predicting what could go wrong, right? We're in this new phase with trusting our intuition and discernment to keep us from harm, but also lead us to the direction that we're actually meant to be in because we're following our heart, we're following our soul. And it's like all of this is coming through right now and I'm sharing with you and all of this wisdom is coming through. But I myself also am human and struggle with like knowing how to apply these things. So I'm hearing it even feeling the resistance. So some of you could also be feeling resistance as well because it's like there's this part of us that feels like we don't want to bypass. We want to be honest and real about it. And there's something about hearing messages that tell us to trust our intuition when we are facing significant challenges that bring up this feeling in some of us that we're bypassing or ignoring our problems. And that's not what you're doing when you're trusting your intuition. When you're trusting your intuition, it's easier for you to come by solutions that are actually in alignment with where you're headed. Versus when you only listen to your logic alone, I think a blend of both, a balance of both is really important. But when you only listen to that version of you, a lot of what happens is maybe you find solutions, but they were rooted in fear. And so ultimately, you still get to a place where you're not fulfilled internally. So the goal long term of living a life where you are leading with your intuition or you're letting your intuition lead is that you are in alignment. You stay in alignment and you end up ultimately more fulfilled. You're not just making decisions based on what feels necessarily the safest in the moment, but what you know is going to actually keep you on the path that you intuitively know that you're meant to be on. And I think that the problem right now is that because so many of us are still really stuck in fear, we don't even know what we're meant to be doing because our focus has been on survival and on what we have to do. I'm struggling with that myself because I'm being pulled in two different directions. My spirit's pulling me here to you to share these messages, but there are things happening in my life that are pulling me to do things that I feel like I need to do. So if you're feeling that kind of contrast right now, that friction between those two things, know that this is part of the process, okay? And this process could take a long time for some and it could be quick for others. It just depends on how quickly you're able to learn and integrate it, but it's not easy. And I just came here to say that this message will not make sense to everybody. It will only make sense to those who are at this stage. And if you are, then you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. And really the message is to just keep going, okay? Just keep going. You got this.